Hello, friends. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me today for another near-death experience interview today with Kathy McDaniel. I want to say up front that this is one of the most inspiring conversations that I have ever had with anybody. Kathy McDaniel did have a mostly hellish near-death experience. And you guys are always asking me, what about the hellish experiences? So when I heard her story, I knew I have got to get her on and I've got to ask her all of our hardest questions, which I did. And I will say, I want to give a trigger warning because some of the content in this interview could be disturbing for some. There's one scene that has to do with abortion. So trigger warning for anything to do with abortion or losing a child, miscarriage, anything like that. However, I want to emphasize that Kathy's message is so incredibly inspiring and comforting. If you can watch through this interview and get to the insights that she shares afterwards and then to the Q&A portion, you will not be disappointed. So her experience is about the first 15-20 minutes of it, and then after that she goes into sharing the messages and what she integrated from that experience, and then we go into the Q&A, which is just blew my mind. In today's portion of the interview, I will share her near-death experience and the insights that she brought back from that. And in tomorrow's portion, we will go into the Q&A. A little bit of background on Kathy. Her name is MK McDaniel, but she goes by Kathy. She was hospitalized for ARDS and lung failure in 1999. She was placed on a ventilator and into a drug-induced coma. A disturbing near-death experience occurred, and although mostly traumatic, the incredible bliss of heaven shifted her religious beliefs to a deep spirituality. She credits the International Association of Near-Death Studies, or IANS, members for sharing the tools to learn acceptance and an integration of her disturbing NDE, allowing the joy of her purpose to emerge. She continues to share her comforting message of God's mercy and unconditional love via podcasts, radio programs, and speaking engagements. Kathy has written a book called Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expat, which I will link in the description, along with her website and all of her social media. So please check out my description box if you'd like to purchase her book or get in touch with Kathy. Thank you guys so much for watching. Welcome to the show, Kathy. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Of course, I've been so excited about this interview. I've really been looking forward to it, and I'd love to have you start by sharing your near-death experience with us in whatever way you feel led.
Okay. It started off with me being asked to be a caregiver for my best friend who had leukemia. He was 52, and I had retired and sold my business. I was very lucky to be able to do that. And I said, sure. And it was supposed to be 3 to 5 months, but he hung on, and we encouraged him to do so. But it took 8 months, and he finally passed away. And by then I was pretty much an emotional and physical wreck with very little sleep and all the trauma. I caught a flu that was going around. That turned into pneumonia and then into ARDS. Another friend of mine, thank goodness, got me to the hospital in time. There was no pulse in the ambulance. They had to restart me. And I just have like flashes of what was happening there. It was the last thing I really remember is the ball going down December 31st, 1999. That was the the big turnover to the century, and that stuck in my mind. And then I remember seeing my dad. There was a little window on the door of the ICU, and he was just giving me a thumbs up because the doctor had told me, we can't keep your oxygen levels up, and we're going to have to intubate you and put you into a coma, and you won't remember anything that happens. We're giving you this drug, white amnesia or something. So you just go to sleep. You'll be fine. Well, he was right. I remembered nothing about the medical procedures, but I remember everything to this day, almost 22 years later, of what happened when I found myself in the darkness. And I just woke up in complete darkness, no sound, didn't know if I was standing on something, sitting on something. I thought, well, am I in a closet? What happened? something went wrong. And as I kind of sat there, it started to turn kind of reddish, like a sun was coming up. And I thought, okay. And then it got kind of foggy with this sun reddish. And then it started getting warm. And then it started smelling kind of bad. And then I heard these shrieks and moaning in the background. And I'm trying to see through this because I thought, what's going on? And this terrible voice came out of the fog and it said, do you know where you are? And I had to quick and come up with an answer. And the only thing that made any sense at all was hell. And he just boomed out this horrible maniacal laugh on a terrible horror movie show. And I just took off into the darkness. I had to get away. It was like fight or flight. And the next thing I knew, I was in this completely burned out, ruined city. Like it looked like New York with all the buildings toppled, the windows blown out. There's fires all over the place, big pieces of concrete rebar sticking out of them. And again, it was like, I had no idea I was dead. I just thought it was me, and something went very wrong somewhere. I didn't know where I was. I thought I was still on Earth. So I thought, well, that's what happened. There was an atomic explosion. So I tried to hide in this little crevice I found just to kind of get a lay of the land, because I could hear all these noises and screaming and stuff. And I thought, oh gosh, maybe, all kinds of things go through your mind. So I did see what I thought was another person kind of huddled down over there. And I thought, oh, great, somebody survived. I said, hello, why don't we get together? I'll come over there and maybe we can find some food or get some, something. And the guy just came back with this kind of echoey voice. It's like, we are all alone here. Okay. So then I start hearing these kind of weird scuttling noises. I see people that kind of look like zombies coming out of the fog, and it's all in great detail in the book. I'll just shorten it up for you. I ran. I'm trying to climb up walls and get around, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm back in the dark, but there's like this scene in front of me, like a movie set. And again, I'm thinking, what is going on? But at least it wasn't on fire, so that turned into a weird scene, because here's a person that I know from my family with these other two people, and they're doing this movie scene. And I thought, oh, well, thank heavens, and I kind of climbed up on the set, and she looked at me and says, oh, you look like hell, sit down here. And I said I did, and it was like a beauty parlor scene. And they were telling me that all I needed to do was fix my hair and a little makeup and all this other stuff. And I said, no, you people don't understand what's going on here. Something from the outside is not going to fix what's going on here. Well, they poo-pooed everything. And so I left. I just got back into the dark. But then this road kind of appeared. And this road it showed up every time between the scenes. I'd find myself on this road. And it was like being in the desert at twilight. There was no moon or stars or anything, but it was just enough to where you could see that was a rocky kind of gravelly road, and there was nothing much on the landscape, maybe some sort of pile of rocks or some dead tree or something along the way. And I would look behind myself and look in the front, afraid of what was going to come out of the dark. But since it was flat, I figured if I could just keep creeping along, maybe I could get out of here, because there was definitely a mistake. I shouldn't be here. But then I would come to another scenario, or it would just flash me into another place. All of a sudden, there was this bright light, and I was in what looked like a hospital corridor. And at the very end of it, there was a demon. I mean, there was just no other way to describe that big, ugly being that just radiated hate or something. And he starts running down this hall towards me, carrying something, a stick or something. And I freaked out, and I looked to the left and right, and there's doors on either side of me. But when I turned around, he was right in my face. And I just stood there like, uh-oh, and he says, you've got a job here, you know. And I said, job? And he says, yes, you go into that room over there and you take what they give you and you take it over and you put it in that room over there. That's your job. And he stood there. And I thought, okay, well, all right, I'm just going to play along. And the minute I get a chance to slip out of here, find a door or something, I'm out of here. So I went into this room and I was surprised because it was all these people on gurneys, like they were having procedures or something, but they were obviously women and their legs were spread and there was a sheet in front of their legs and there was a doctor between their legs. And I thought, what? You know, are they getting pap tests? Or I didn't know what was going on and I didn't know I was there. And this doctor raised his hand and it was all bloody and he turned around, he says, get over here. So I went over and he says, take this. And he had been doing an abortion on this woman and he slapped this poor little desecrated baby and all the stuff into my arms and says, don't just stand there, take it over back to the hall. So I was disgusted and terrified and what have I gotten myself into? So I just wandered back into the hall and that demon's pointing to the other room. So I was in shock and I walked over and I looked in this room and it looked like a great big Costco. It was huge. And there was piles and piles of all these dead corpses of babies. And it smelled bad. It was just awful. So I put this poor little thing down and I backed out into the hallway and he says, get back over there. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. And he really raised this thing up and he says, you have no idea what you're inviting by that. And I says, well, I'm not staying here. And he says, you're right. And boom, I was out again. Well, this went on. And unfortunately, it got worse. And I didn't know, except that I had to keep moving. I had to keep trying to get out. I wasn't, wherever I was, there had to be a way out of here. So it went on and on. I got to the worst and the final part of it. Again, I got in great detail in the book. It's just too hard to talk about it. People don't really want to hear about that. Maybe they do, but I don't feel comfortable. I got to the end. I didn't know it was going to be the end, but I was in a very bad situation again with other women in this horrible, drafty shack. Snow was piled up high outside. We'd had to walk miles and miles in the snow with these ragged clothes. And we were somewhere in the middle of freaking nowhere. And with this woman kind of demon that told us we had a new job and we would just be waiting for customers. Well, that didn't sound good. And I had been there, it felt like if I had to put a time on it, there's no clocks, no wristbands, no nothing down there. So I guessed around 2 years. I was wandering around down there. I was getting very tired. They had been telling me all along, this, if you'll just despair, if you just give up, you're not getting out of here. If you just give up, things will be easier for you. And I thought, no, I'm not gonna stay here. I'm just not. So I was not looking forward to this next, whatever was going to happen to us. And I said to this hulking, terrible woman, I've been here a long time. And this feels like a particularly bad day. You don't have days here, but I don't know what else to call it. And she just quipped, well, it's heaven on earth. It's always the worst day in hell. Well, hell, Christmas. I thought, oh, great. So I thought, okay, Christmas. And I started singing Away in a Manger. That's my favorite Christmas carol. Well, she freaked out and told me to stop. She's yelling at me. And these other ladies, all right, they start singing along too. Away in a manger, no crib for his bed, the little Lord Jesus. We got to the word Jesus. It didn't get out of our mouths. And this thing came barreling at me, screaming no at the top of her lungs. And here's the bright light. But the bright light this time is beautiful. and I feel like I'm swimming in love. That's all I can, every cell of me was just bursting with love and joy and happiness. I just, it was just overwhelmingly wonderful. I mean, it was, I had, and everything else receded. I couldn't remember. All I knew is I was here. That was the only thoughts I had at the time. But then I looked over, and there was this like table and a big book open, and my friend who had died a month ago. And there he was, and he died a terrible death, lost all his hair and got all purple, and he looked great. He looked about 35 years old. He was happy. He was wearing something I gave him for Christmas. And I thought, oh my gosh, he doesn't know he's dead. I don't want to be the one to tell him. And he just started laughing. He thought that was great. And I thought, why? I didn't say anything. How did he know what I was saying? And then I thought, oh, can I dare think that I'm dead? Yippee, I'm in heaven with my best friend. And I said in my mind, show me, let's go. Why are we standing here? And he said, now, Mary Kay, you've got too much left to do. What? That's a terrible joke. It's not funny. And I looked over at that table again, and I realized that he'd been showing me something in that book. And I can only imagine, because it's not okay to remember a lot of stuff when you get back, because it takes all the fun out of it to be on Earth, not knowing what the heck you're supposed to be doing. That's just the way it goes. And so I woke up, and I couldn't move, and I was hot, and I thought, oh God, here we go again. But my family was there. I think that's who it was, and I was totally, had no idea what was going on. So they're praising God, and they're coming over and giving me kisses, and I've still got that thing in my throat, so I can't talk. And thank God, because I was not happy to be there, believe me. It was a blessing for them. And they're telling me, you've been sick, and you've been in a coma, and we didn't think you would live, and all that other stuff. And I thought, why can't I move? Why can't I talk? Why am I so hot? Well, I weighed 86 pounds. I'd lost all my muscle mass, so I could not move. I could move one finger, and I could blink. That was it. And I thought, this is reverberating in my head. You've got too much left to do. And I thought, how is this going to happen? Come on. So I was finally, after a couple of days, they gave me something to stick in my throat so I could talk. And I sounded like a robot. I could talk, but at least I could talk. They had to start all over. I was like an infant. I had to learn. I had no muscles, so I had to go PT. I had to go to a rehab facility for PT for a month. I had to work 7 days a week, trying to learn how to crawl, how to use my hands, how to button, how to feed myself, how to swallow, literally like an infant. So when they were trying to get me to get more muscle in my back, they put me in a chair and tied me in it. And I would have to be there for like an hour at a time, and it was cramping all up and down my spine and legs. It was awful. The whole thing was awful. And I was very angry. I was very angry to be sent back. So after a total month in the hospital in CCU, then another whole month, 30 days in a physical rehab, I finally went home. I had no home. I thank God the friend of mine who I'd casually been dating and got me to the hospital in time had been at my bedside every day. And he asked me to marry him. And I said, sure. Yeah, you're a really nice person. You saved my life. I don't know a whole lot about you, but I have no home. I have no job. I have nothing. And my folks, says, well, you can come back and live with us. Well, I was 53 years old. I thought, nah, it's not an option. So we went back to his house, and slowly but surely I got my life back. It took me 6 months to be the least bit happy about being on this planet. And I was not very good company. And I was still haunted by the demons. I remembered heaven so wonderfully, but then there was that little bit of doubt. Wonder if next time I die, I have to go through that all again. It was awful. And so I started writing. I started writing it because it wasn't going away, because my family says, oh, it's just a dream. It was the drugs. The doctor says, you had white amnesia. You can't remember anything. And I thought, you don't know what you're talking about here, pal. I do. And so a lot of time went by, about 10 years. I couldn't find anybody to talk to. Then all of a sudden, all these strange coincidences started dominoing left and right. Synchronicities, now I know that they are, but it was time. It was time, I guess, for me to process some of that and be able to be grounded enough to move on and use that information anyway through a long series of impossible situations. I found myself in an IONS meeting. It was very weird to walk into a place where people say, did you have a near-death experience? And I say, I think so. And I would listen, I went and I would listen, but everybody had angels, and saw their pets, and I don't know, I didn't fit. I thought, well, this was close, but I know this isn't it. Then I didn't come, and then I came again, and somebody said, well, you need to read Howard Storm or Nancy Evans Bush, or some of these people who had, we called it dark then, dark near-death experiences. Maybe that'll help. I read everything I could get my hands on, and there wasn't much, but Nancy Evans Bush became my heroine. And she came up with she's got like 3 books. I read them cover to cover. But she came up with this thing that really resonated with me, and it was the distressing or dark experiences are usually given to brave souls. And I thought, brave? I would love to be called brave instead of damned. That's a step up. And I read on, and it was something to the effect that I studied 4 years of Latin, and so we studied all the ancient Greek heroes that would go down into the Hades, down into hell, and bring back the fair princess, or bring back the jewel of great price, or bring back something. That they were heroes because they would dare death to go down and bring something of importance back to humanity. So I thought, I'll go with that. I'll just think about that. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, what did I learn? What would be of value for, something like that? And I thought, well, after talking to all these IONS people, to going to conferences, to listening to one person after another, I finally got it. All these people went right to heaven. There was no judgment, I was told. There's no God up there that's vengeful and mean and will send you to hell. Everybody goes to heaven, and we've been in heaven to start with. We're just pieces of God's, our souls are pieces of God. And we go through this elaborate plan, pre-planning our lives. We want to learn experiences on earth. You might get a little bored being in heaven when everybody's reading your thoughts and nothing's new. So it might be kind of fun to go down and see what empathy is, see what bravery is, see what kindness is like, as a contrast, because you can't understand something unless you really know the contrast. So I was okay with that. I thought, so I planned all of this to come down here and have all these experiences, some of them very tragic and horrible, so that I would learn things and help other people learn things. Oh, yes, you've got your soul group and it's you set it out and the guides have to kind of put the stamp on it and then you get to go and then you come back and then there's the guides are there and you get this life review and you get to see how you did. It's like a no-fail test. You get to see how it was your whole life, what you did, what you experienced, how you influenced people, how things changed because you were on the planet. And then you get to flip it around and see how it felt to interact with you. So to be your sister, to be your friend, to be that bum on the street, to be that boss you just can't stand, how it felt for them. How did you interact with those people? And there's no judgment. You just kind of, I'm told, say, wow, I knocked it out of the park there, but probably didn't do so well there. That would be something I'd work again on if I went back again. So my whole life changed. My whole feeling, the biggest thing that went away was the feeling of being a victim, of God picking on me. Why did God kill my little 2-day-old baby and take my baby from me? That terrible way she died. Why did God do that? I'm so mad at God. But to be able to say, oh, well, that baby only wanted to come down to earth for a short period of time, loves me dearly, and says, I'll go along for the ride. 9 months and 2 days, and I'm out of there. But I will help you go through that. So all of those things made me see that I had nobody to blame but myself. But it wasn't a blame. It was, I want to learn something. So now here I am 20-something years later, and things are still happening. My best friend is now in the hospital. They don't know what's wrong with him. He's been there 12 days. I'm going to go see him this afternoon. They wouldn't let me in because of COVID. Talking to him on the phone is like, what happened? Blah, blah, blah. What's going on? It's like, no. Last night I said to him, we planned this. We just don't remember. He goes, that's right. And I says, you planned it to be sick and not know what was going on. And I planned to be there at that time so I could help you. Let's figure out what the lesson is. We don't want to do this again. So you're right. Okay. So I'm going to see him this afternoon. We'll see what we come up with. But that just changes everything. It's wonderful. So the other thing is that I chose to go to hell. And the way I know that is I was cradle Catholic. From the time I was teeny tiny, I was taught about heaven, purgatory, and hell. And God will judge me at the end of my life, and he'll look at everything that I did, and he'll make a decision where I go. And be prepared, Kathy, that almost nobody goes straight to heaven. Just very pure saints. Mother Teresa, she got to go to heaven. But the rest of us will have to go to hell and be purified so that we can get our sins burned off and go to heaven and be with God and be pure. I bought it. I lived my life thinking that was true. I made decisions based on that. Ooh, this is going to earn me some time in purgatory. Maybe I better go take my mom out to lunch and balance it out. I mean, it was a big math problem, but I thought, well, maybe I got the math wrong. I added and subtracted wrong. And that's why I went to purgatory, because purgatory is just like hell, but you get out. So now all these years later, I'm thinking and hearing about people. I chose that. I chose to believe that. I chose it so that I manifested it. I brought all the terrible things that happened to me in my life that were hellish, and I just kind of made them worse. And that was my hell. It's scary to think that you have that power. And what I want to shout from the rooftops is you don't have to go. You choose to go. If you just can learn to believe that God is loving and forgiving and non-judgmental, because that's the truth, then you can skip the trip. And so again, afterwards, when, every now and then, being still human, a few years after that all dawned on me, I said to God one time, it's so much easier to talk to God now. He's right there. I know you said that I don't have to go and blah, 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 but just to be sure, is there a few things that maybe I could be doing now that will remind me that this is all, the way it's supposed to be? So over a series of months, he gave me these words: just be loving and kind, merciful and forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful. So I made that up on a card, and I read that every morning when I get up and look at my picture of Jesus. Dear Jesus, please help me to be. And that puts me in the frame of mind that as the day develops, that that's the way to respond. So those two things are what I have to share.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
I love that you've got a tail back there going.
Yeah, she always comes out when I'm talking to people. Otherwise, she's under the bed.
Oh, cats are funny. Isn't it nice to know that the pets are in heaven?
Oh, yes.
It's so cool. And that you can talk to them. You can even talk to them now, which I do. I've got a lot of grand dogs that went before me. And it's just so nice to know that when I pass, they'll be waiting for me.
Oh, yeah. So wonderful. But thank you so much, not only for sharing your story, but all the wisdom that you've gained in integrating your experience over the years. What you said about planning the life ahead is so inspiring to me, and how you're able to talk to your best friend about that now and figure out what the lesson is. It just makes it just takes the pressure off, at least for me. Takes the fear
for
out
me
of
too.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny too. I did a show not too long ago, and it must have been done in the Bible Belt, because there was like 100 and some on, replies that went on the Facebook thing right after it. And I would say, well, 90%, I think I counted, 90% said, well, all you had to do was call on Jesus. Or Matthew 9, chapter 4 through 15, line 6 says, thou must call on. I mean, every single one of them. And 10 of them said, Kathy, I love what you said. The other 90. Well, and I thought about that. And I thought, somebody hit me up again with that the other day. They broke in and said, well, all you had to do was call on Jesus. And I said, all right. You got to take the context. Number one, I was not at the grocery store when I ran into a demon. I was in their home. I had no idea how I got there. Everything was about hell. There was no thought of God. God doesn't go where God is not wanted. I didn't even think of it. I couldn't conceive of that. That is not my fault. So it's very different to be a spirit in the afterlife than it is to be a spirit on earth, where we have this delusion that we have some control over things. So if we get in a bad situation here, we say, help me, Jesus. And sometimes it seems like God helps, but you know what? God doesn't interrupt with our free will. And if this is the path we have chosen, God won't interrupt. So when people think, oh, I shouldn't go down that path, this is just what I think. What I think happens is that when I'm in a pickle and I forget for a minute, God, help me. God does. God gives me grace to be strong. God gives me grace to remember. God gives me grace to say, I love you, Kath, you're doing a great job. But God doesn't stop the car or make somebody, because I planned what's going to happen. And my free will, he won't stomp on that. So that's another kind of interesting thing. And again, I apologize to people telling you this is what you should think, because everybody has their own experience. I can only share mine, and I apologize.
Oh, no, that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And you definitely have some experience to back up what you're saying. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
No, go ahead.